You know the face, you've seen that smile 1,000 times, but have you ever really stopped to ask yourself why? Why is this one little portrait the most famous, the most valuable, and maybe the most mysterious painting on the entire planet? Well, the story of how it got that way is a wild ride of absolute genius, a shocking crime, and just pure chance. So let's get into it and try to unravel the Mona Lisa mystery. You might think our story starts in a dusty 16th century studio. But nope, we're starting in Paris, 1911. Imagine waking up one morning and hearing the news. The Mona Lisa is just gone, snatched right off the wall of the Louvre. An international manhunt kicked off, and for 2 whole years, the empty space on that museum wall was almost as famous as the painting itself. Today, its insured value is somewhere in the neighborhood of $1 billion. But let's be real, it's priceless. The real story here, though, isn't about the money. It's about how it earned that insane price tag. Was it always seen as the absolute pinnacle of art? Or did something happen along the way that just catapulted this portrait into a global icon? I think you'll find the answer is way more surprising than you think. So, to really understand the fame, we have to start with the most basic question of all. Who exactly is the woman in the painting? Her name actually gives us our first big clue. See, Mona is just a short version of Monna, which is the old Italian way of saying Madam. So Mona Lisa pretty much just means Madam Lisa. And her other name, La Gioconda, that comes from her husband's last name, and it also happens to translate to the cheerful one. Kind of fitting, right? For hundreds of years, people had all these wild theories. Was it Da Vinci's own mother, some mysterious duchess? And then there was the wildest one of all, that it was actually a cleverly disguised self-portrait of Leonardo himself in drag. But, after all that debate, historians have finally pieced together the real story, and it's a lot more down to earth than all that. So meet the real Mona Lisa, Lisa Gherardini. She was the wife of a silk merchant in Florence. The painting was probably commissioned around 1503, either to celebrate them buying a new house or the birth of their second son. And that subtle veil she's wearing, it might actually be a sign of mourning for a daughter who had died just a few years earlier. So suddenly, there's this layer of quiet sadness, hidden right there behind that famous smile. Okay, so we know who she is, but that's not the whole story, not even close. The real magic, the thing that has mesmerized people for 500 years, is in how Da Vinci painted her. Leonardo basically invented this technique that broke all the rules. It's called sfumato, which means something like vanished or smoked. You have to remember, at the time, all the other artists were using sharp, clear lines. And here comes Leonardo intentionally blurring the outlines, especially around her eyes and mouth, to create this hazy, smoky effect that felt unbelievably real. To get how big of a genius Da Vinci was, you gotta remember he was as much a scientist as he was an artist. This guy was spending his nights in hospitals dissecting human faces just to understand the precise mechanics of every single muscle and nerve that goes into making an expression. He knew exactly how a smile worked from the inside out. And this is where that science turns into pure artistic magic. It's an optical illusion. Seriously, try it. If you look at her eyes, the blurred corners of her mouth are in your peripheral vision, which is great at picking up shadows, and she looks like she's smiling. But now look directly at her mouth. The smile just vanishes because your central vision picks up the fine detail, which is a pretty flat line. He is literally painting uncertainty. It's incredible. Okay, so we've got a real person and we've got a work of scientific and artistic genius. But even that isn't enough to explain why she's a household name all over the world. Before that heist in 1911, the painting was respected for sure, but only in art circles. The average person walking down the street in New York or London, they probably wouldn't have known her name. She was just one masterpiece hanging among thousands of others. So, what was it? What was the one single event that took this painting from a museum wall and launched it into global superstardom? And here's the big twist in the story. The Mona Lisa's fame wasn't sealed by an art critic or a king. It was cemented by a common criminal. The guy behind it all was Vincenzo Peruggia. He was an Italian handyman who'd actually worked at the Louvre. He honestly believed that this painting, made by an Italian master, had been stolen by Napoleon and that it belonged back home in Italy. And get this, back then, security wasn't what it is today. His plan was ridiculously simple. He just hid in a closet overnight and walked out the front door with it under his coat the next morning. And this is the absolute key to her fame.
The theft turned the Mona Lisa into a media sensation. Her face was suddenly plastered on the front page of newspapers all over the globe. She wasn't just a painting anymore. She was a missing person, a pop culture phenomenon. So when she was finally found and returned, she came back as a full-blown celebrity.
But just when you think the story's over, another mystery pops up. One that suggests the painting we all know in the Louvre might not be the whole story. This whole wild theory kicks off with a clue left by another Renaissance giant, the artist Raphael. See, back in 1504, he made a sketch of the Mona Lisa, but in his drawing, she's clearly sitting between two big columns that are completely missing from the painting in the Louvre. So, what gives? Well, that's led to this fascinating debate about another painting, known as the Isleworth Mona Lisa. It matches Raphael's sketch perfectly, right down to those columns. And if you look closely, the woman seems younger, her smile is a lot less mysterious, and it's painted on canvas, not wood like the one in Paris. So, could Da Vinci have really painted two of them? The main theory is that this might be an earlier version that Da Vinci started for Lisa's family, but never finished. Maybe he just did the face and hands, and a student filled in the rest later. The truth is, nobody knows for sure, and it's still one of the hottest debates in the art world, which just adds one more fascinating layer of intrigue to the whole thing. So in the end, her fame is this perfect storm of artistic genius, a simple crime, a media explosion, and a mystery that just won't quit. She's a masterpiece, wow, but not just of paint and canvas. She's a masterpiece of history itself. And maybe, just maybe, the reason we're all still so captivated is that after 500 years, that enigmatic smile is telling us she's still got a few secrets left to keep.